Over the years, the dynamics of wealth and power have shifted significantly, leading to what sociologists would call the haves and have-nots. However, unfortunately, millions of people have it so bad that they're literally homeless and forced to spend their days on the streets begging for money. Many of them that you see on the street are actually honest people who do have needs, but sadly, the institution of begging has also made it easy for people who don't have needs to pretend like they do. Some of these fake beggars even go to extreme lengths to fool people into giving them money. In this video, we'll have a look at a few of these charlatans who have been exposed, as well as how extensive their efforts were. Join us as we have a look at 15 fake beggars who took it too far. Are you new to this channel? Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And before we start, also like the video. Number 15. Fake violin players. We all know the drill with some roadside beggars. Someone sets up a tent and displays their talent. It could be a musical instrument or perhaps some dancing, anything really, as long as they wow their audience and the people are entertained, they will cough up money. Well, what if I told you that even this can be faked? In 2022, the Sheriff's Office in Okaloosa, Florida, put out an alert telling people to be wary of talented violinists who would literally play violin recordings on loudspeakers while acting like they were doing the real thing. Whatever gets people to drop their coins, right? A news crew actually decided to test this. They got a violin specialist to look at a few recordings, and she was able to specify one woman who was especially doing some absolute nonsense. A news anchor tried asking the woman in question about her art, and well, you guessed it, she was a charlatan. You can see that her hands are moving extremely quickly. I don't blame her though. If I was faking something so overtly and someone called me out, I would probably run for the hills as well. Number 14. The Bangladeshi Acrobatic Beggar. Third world countries are usually hotspots for begging. After all, the countries are quite poor and a lot of people are in need. Still though, this beggar from Bangladesh definitely took things a little bit too far in his quest to gain some sympathy. Captured in 2019, the guy would look like an ordinary street beggar and even had a deformed body to boot, with a deformed leg that somehow grew bent over his left shoulder. Here's the thing though, he's absolutely, positively not disabled. A camera crew would follow him around after having suspicions that he was phoning it in. And at first, he got pretty violent, going as far as even trying to shove the camera from his face. But when he thought that he wasn't being watched anymore, he then finally let himself go. Cameras eventually caught up with him, and he explained the reason for this strange line of work and even gave a demonstration of how he had managed to distort his body so well with such flexibility. He may well be suited better for the circus. Number 13. A disabled beggar's hidden legs. A few years ago, footage of this guy would hit the internet and everyone began talking about it. The beggar had reportedly been in the position for a while, moving around with the help of a simple four-wheeled board. Of course, his entire shtick was that he was crippled, so he couldn't work and needed people to pitch in for him. Sadly though, his luck appeared to run out on this fateful day after a passerby noticed that there was just something that wasn't right with the way that he looked. After a few moments of tugging at the guy's pants, the passerby was able to finally get them off, revealing that the beggar actually did have both of his feet. You look at the guy wheeling away as he discovers that he's done for. Good luck explaining that one. Number 12. The Boastful Panhandlers. In 2016, Bonnie Gould, a woman from Lewiston, Maine, was taking her daughter to dinner when she overheard something strange. Just by the side of the restaurant where she was about to go in, she had seen a few panhandlers who were literally talking about their daily loot. That rage, they proceeded to. Bonnie had planned to speak with the restaurant managers, but before she could even get there, she saw that the panhandlers were already back at their station, asking more people for money. Incensed, Bonnie then decided to take matters into her own hands. The situation heated up when the panhandlers came back to confront them. The two panhandlers were eventually charged, and interestingly, though the charge was not for panhandling, it was because things literally got physical. In the end, two of the beggars would be charged with physical assault. Number 11, homeless man with a big house. To be honest, it's one thing for you to be so openly dishonest that you actually become a fake beggar. However, it's an entire different ballgame when you're playing like this guy. This California-based panhandler had grown quite popular in the community that he was begging out of, and according to reports, his modus operandi was simple. He would show up every morning, beg for food and money, and then leave in the evening. No one really knew where he went or what he did with all of that money that he got, but I'm guessing that they simply assumed that he had skulked into a hole or something similar. However, two curious guys would decide to follow him one day when his shift was over, and you wouldn't believe what they saw. Apparently, the guy had parked his car only a few streets away, so he simply got into his pretty plush-looking ride and drove all the way to his sprawling mansion. They decided to knock on the door, and let's say that things escalated pretty quickly. Okay, how can I help you? Is this your... I'm just curious, is this your house? So, it was you then? I saw you get into what looked like sort of a nice car and then come here. The guy even became combative after being confronted with his actions. Jealous of me, bro? Is that what it is? Listen to me, I'm asking you nicely to get off my porch, okay? Now, getting seriously? Alright, that's fine, dude. And it turns out the guy was a jerk. It turns out that some people really are the worst. Number 10. Bogus kidney disease. If you're going to be a fake beggar, the least that you can do is make sure that you've got the right props. It's why I have to give credit to this person, a man from Kenya who became popular in 2013 after faking a kidney disease just to get sympathy from passers-by. This man faked his disease for many years and even went as far as manufacturing a fake catheter to sell his condition. The guy would literally glue the catheter to his stomach and wear a shirt over top of it so that nobody would be any wiser. According to some reports, he would make about 300 Kenyan shillings every single day. That's about $2. And you'd really have to go through all that stress for a measly $2? The man claimed that his wife had died of AIDS and had left him with the children and with no other income. He decided to turn to fake begging to make ends meet. But why didn't he just get a job or turn to family members for help is really anyone's guess. You do have to give him some credit though, at least he was dedicated enough to get the fake catheter. Number 9. The Bangladeshi fake beggar. As said earlier, third world countries are easy hotspots for beggars. The countries are already poor, with millions living below the poverty line. It's pretty easy to find people begging for money. At least you know many of these people are actually beggars. It can, however, be truly perplexing when you find some healthy citizens just mooching off of society. A few years ago, a video went viral in Bangladesh after locals in one of the country's inner cities confronted a guy who was literally just lying on the ground and asking for money. The guy had claimed to have a chronic disease, and he essentially put a mat on the floor and would just lay there with no movement or anything. All that he did was breathe and give off the occasional cough. After a few rounds of questioning, the guy suddenly got up and sat straight. Wow, what a miracle! The guy would eventually be counseled and was convinced to get up and dust himself off. It looks like the jig was up in the end. Number 8. The fake army vet. If there's one thing that easily tugs at the heartstrings of every American, it's the military. Everyone loves a good military story. Men and women who risk their lives to ensure the safety of regular citizens. And when a military vet comes back from active duty, they're usually treated like the heroes they are. As you can imagine, several people have also tried to benefit from this feeling with their bogus begging campaigns. A few years ago, Garrett Goodwin, an actual army vet, spotted a panhandler at an intersection in Tampa. He saw that this fake beggar was wearing a military uniform, and if there's one thing that a real military man hates, it's a fake military man, especially one who's disrespecting the uniform and the country. The uniform signifies the sacrifice an army veteran homeless needs help. I realized pretty quickly that I think it's safe to say that this encounter did not go as the poser had planned it. Goodman got out of his car and literally hounded the fake military vet. I don't know, I take off our uniform. The reactions to this were different. Some believed that Goodman had bullied the guy and that he had gone too far. But Goodman didn't care. Military uniform, and he's bullying their heartstrings and bullying their sympathy. When it's all over, it's the real military vet that everyone should be supporting. Number 7. A handicap case gone wrong. There's something that tends to bug me about people who pretend to be disabled just to get money. If you get caught and someone begins to ask you about the veracity of your claims, shouldn't that give you a sign that your act is about to be exposed? Take a look at this guy, for example. The video, captured about a year ago, shows a man who had obviously been watching this beggar for a while now and decided to confront him. The man was literally questioning this fake beggar about his claims to be disabled and whether he was really what he had claimed to be. Instead of just moving on though, the guy continued to ask for money. Eventually, the man asking the questions would get fed up with the entire thing and ask the faker to just confess, even if it had to be done by force. Stuff like this just gets embarrassing. I mean, where do you actually go from there? Number 6. Beggars refusing help. When you see a beggar, the conventional reaction would be to help them by giving them money. However, for Mike Potoff, giving money was just not good enough. The guy actually wanted to help the beggars that he found, but they literally rejected him. So, here's how the story goes. Mike is a businessman in Iowa who owns a convenience store. Back in 2015, he noticed 2 boys around the store who seemed to have been begging for money. Instead of just giving them some cash though, he literally went to the boys and hired them to come and work for him. But to his utter shock, they said no. Apparently, they would rather loiter around his store and beg for money rather than get an honest job and make an income. A few days later, the boys would come back. Mike offered them a job and they rejected him again. Instead of just sending them away though, Mike decided to serve them with a taste of their own medicine. He took up a sign and stood beside the boys with his sign reading. Offered these guys a job. They said no, don't give them money. Same 2 teenage boys holding a sign reading, "Broken, hungry, please help," on a street corner by his store. You know what? I think Mike deserves to be named Businessman of the Year for this one. Number 5. DDUDU. The story of DDUDU is not necessarily one of a man who faked an injury or deliberately decided to phone it in that he was a beggar. But instead, it was a man who was forced by circumstances of his life to become one. Dinesh's story went viral years back after he was recognized by some people who had actually known him before his days on the street. Before he had resorted to begging to make ends meet, he actually worked as a university professor who had a monthly salary of 35,000 rupees. That's about $500. The problem, however, was that Dinesh's son was a drug addict, and the boy would literally rob him just to get a regular fix. Facing bankruptcy along with the lack of funds, he decided to head to the streets and fake a disability. Money was drying up, so he had no choice but to fake an injury. The national story would go viral, and people actually pitied him. They donated money to him, got him off the streets, and comforted him as he began his road back to recovery. So, when it's all said and done, all's well that ends well. Number 4. The Kentucky Bogus Beggar. Back in 2016, the story of Gary Thompson became pretty popular after he would be busted for being a fake beggar. Thompson, who had become known across Kentucky as the Bogus Beggar, didn't just decide to fake a physical disability. He also faked a neurological one. Riding around in his wheelchair, the Bogus Beggar would work to gain sympathies by inventing one story or another while deliberately slurring his speech. Thompson had actually gone to school and gotten a degree in speech pathology. When he couldn't get a job, he then decided to put his degree to use in a different way. He got a wheelchair and took on the persona of a mentally ill person, gaining sympathy from all the people around him. And for a long time, it did work. According to reports, Thompson confirmed that his panhandling would allow him to earn 6 figures comfortably, all of which, as you know, came tax-free. His act eventually got busted after a news crew had filmed him on one of his escapades. Eventually, he was found guilty of several fraudulent claims and made to serve 14 months in prison. So, at least he wouldn't be homeless anymore. Number 3. Homeless Karen. In 2018, 2 men in Richmond, Virginia were so intrigued by a lady who had been running around different streets begging. Initially, the men explained they were just surprised to see someone who looked relatively healthy but chose to go around asking for money. So that's when they decided to follow the lady to see where she lived. Even though she had claimed to be homeless, they found her in a parking lot getting ready to head out in her 2014 Fiat SUV. You just have to admire the hustle of a beggar with a recent car, right? The ensuing confrontation was very funny. The guys asked her why she was essentially taking people's money, and she threatened to call the cops on them. No, you're all right. What are you doing? Just wondering why you have a 2014 when you're begging for change all over the city of Richmond. You're on. You leave me alone. You're viral. You're on Facebook. Good. You better get me off your cell phone. Everyone be warned. How much did you make today? You have to admire the boldness because she knew that she had done something wrong and was still looking to call the cops. But even still, it ended up getting worse. Some people are really homeless and need help. Stand out here. Why do you stand? What do you disable from? What's your nature of your disability? What is the nature disability? Number 2, Larry the Panhandler. The story of Larry the Panhandler is just like that of any other that you may see. This man, based in Woodland Hills, sparked some serious debate many years ago after he would be found to have been panhandling around the region, taking money from any and everybody. Larry was a pretty convincing guy. He was an old man, so people would be more inclined to give him money. He also carried a placard that claimed that he had no job or income. But Larry was eventually busted after being spotted several times shopping, carrying shopping bags, and even eating inside of his car. Reporters would claim that Larry was living rather comfortably, with a house in a high-end neighborhood and 2 vehicles. Larry would eventually be caught and explained that he had been fake begging since 2008 when the financial crisis hit and he had lost his fortune. I was desperate. I just needed a way to make a little bit of money to, make ends meet, he added, that with panhandling, he could essentially add something to his social security checks. I'm not saying that he didn't have it bad, but panhandling is not the way to go, Grandpa. Number 1, California's traveling panhandlers. A few years ago, a news crew hopped on a story about a group of organized panhandlers who seemed to be moving across California. Normally, these people did not really harm anyone, but their act began setting off a few red flags when people found that they were carrying similar messages and some of them looked oddly familiar. From the San Fernando Valley, "Please help, I've lost my job," to the Santa Clara. All of these people held the same signs. "I lost my job, please help, I have 2 kids. God bless you." To be fair, some of them did say they had 4 kids, so, I guess they aren't necessarily the same. The crazy thing about these panhandlers is that many of them weren't even poor. "So, you're really out of work?" "Yes," you told our undercover producer. "You took the bus here." It's crazy to think that they literally treat panhandling as though it were a full-time job, complete with shifts and all. But you think that doctors have it bad? Just try to be one of these guys. It's easy to see what these guys are doing, just trying to mooch off of the good nature of many other people, diverting attention from the people who really need assistance. I, for one, think that it's atrocious and ridiculous. But what do you think? Have you seen any fake beggars around? Let me know all about it in the comments section down below.